Welcome, JJ Virgin. I have been part of your Mindshare group for a while now, and I've really enjoyed it. A lot of people ask me where I get educated, and I'm not a doctor. I was a lawyer before getting into nutrition and all of this. And how do you know all this stuff? And going to conferences like yours and participating in Mindshare and talking to other practitioners and seeing what tests they're running, what works for them, this isn't stuff they teach in medical school. This is all
No.
stuff that comes from working with clients and from talking to the community. And so what you've provided has been so helpful. You were in this space talking about muscle, protein, all of the building blocks to be strong women. And then I feel like society kind of went away from that for a while and we got really wafy and into just starving ourselves. And I feel like I wanted to discuss with you kind of the trends and where we are now. And I feel like we're at a strange point where with the GLP-1s, people are becoming obsessed with being skinny again. And at the same time, everyone's talking about lifting weights and eating protein.
I think they've done us a great service by shining a light on the problem with poorly designed diets. And the problem with poorly designed diets that GLP-1s have exposed but not created is that if you do not focus first on building muscle, eating protein, doing resistance training, and you just focus on losing weight rather than optimizing what that weight's made up of, you end up in a mess.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think honestly we're making a transition. I sure hope, because I feel like forever it's always been great to be wafy. And when we moved away from being like skinny mini wafy, we moved into being curvy and voluptuous, but not strong and muscular. Like I feel like for the first time ever, and maybe it's because, you know, 40 and 50-year-olds are starting to go, uh-oh, we're starting to pay attention to muscle. But yet women are still afraid of getting big and bulky, which drives
Yeah,
me crazy.
women, and I feel like in our age group, in sort of perimenopause and menopause, they're still really stuck in that sort of 90s super thin look, and they're sort of measuring their self-worth by what the scale
Yeah.
says.
60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000. It really, this has gone on and on and on and on. Like, if you looked in the 50s, a lot of the actresses and models were size 12 and 14, which is wild. And then all of a sudden it went into Twiggy, and it's like it's never come back from that, except for this. It's like kind of the Kim Kardashian effect, but like that's a weird body that doesn't exist in nature.
Right? I agree. And I think all the messaging is really confusing for women, and especially midlife, you're kind of questioning your identity, like your career shifting, your kids are growing, your parents are aging, and it's sort of an identity crisis as it is. And then you throw in all of these confusing messages, and women really don't know where to turn. I know that you offer some great, first of all, I love your paleo shake because so many of us have issues with whey. As much as I love whey and I think it's such a great protein source, I sadly can't use it to
It
drink it all.
is. I don't know if you know what I just did with the shakes too. I was very excited about this because, yes, whey, if you can handle whey, whey is by far the best. Of course, we all know that. But, one of the things I saw when I wrote The Virgin Diet and I was doing food sensitivity testing is that so many people react to dairy. Now, maybe they'll be able to do whey and it won't impact them, especially if they do an isolate, not a concentrate, but still, a lot of people still have issues. And so, the challenge with other protein sources is they don't have the same amino acid profile as whey. That was seen to be superior. So what I woke up one night in the middle of the night, I kid you not, this is when this all happens. I'm like, this is the worst for sleep, but benefits all of us. I woke up and I thought, why wouldn't I just boost the amino acid profiles in my plant-based and paleo shakes so that it mimics whey? Then I have the best of both worlds. And so that's what I did, which I was like, this is so smart. Why hasn't this happened before? Because, the challenge with the bone broth shakes is the benefits. They're rich in collagen, which can be great for hair, skin, and oil, and nails and joints. But the challenge was they didn't have the same profile that you would want for muscle mass. And so now they do.
I have four children, and one of them does great with isolate, and the rest don't. So they need to have different sources of protein. And I think that this is hard in the sort of no attention span social media age where everyone's like, okay, yes, whey is the best and beef is the best or salmon's the best. And there's been a real loss of individuality. Even in my small little unit here at my house, we're all different. We all
Yes.
have different tolerances.
My husband and I have very similar taste buds. But yes, I mean, we're all different. And even him, he needs more carbs than I do.
I think especially at this point in my life, when I was younger, carbs, I didn't think about it one way or the other. The older I get, I definitely feel like I have to earn them. If I have like a good workout, it's fine. If I don't, I'm more bloated the next day. It affects
Yeah.
me differently.
Yeah. Well, think about it. So your carbs ideally are going into your muscle stores as glycogen. And so when you're working out, you're emptying your suitcases, your glycogen suitcases. If you're not, you're not.
Yeah.
So either give them a place to go, but if they don't have a place to go, then what are they going to do? They get converted to fat and then they go into your fat stores. Most of us aren't looking for ways to fill up our fat stores.
No, no. And I just feel like we become so much more susceptible, as mitochondrial function changes, et cetera.
Well, not
Which
just mitochondrial function. So,
hormones.
yeah, it's all the cortisol going up and insulin going up, not getting counterbalanced with estrogen going down, then you can't build muscles much at all. I remember listening to an interview, and I'm not going to name the names, but because this guy's a bully, but and it was two people saying, one was a woman, one was a man, very smart people saying, there's no difference as women go into menopause. And I thought for the woman, I thought, you just wait, Missy, you wait, you are in your early 40s. And the guy, and I'm like, and you're a guy, so I really don't want to hear about it. And for that, I have to shout out to Bill Campbell, who is doing all the menopause research because his wife was struggling so much and he saw it firsthand. I'm like going, sure, there's going to be the occasional woman that sails through menopause. She's a unicorn.
And honestly, even those unicorns, I kind of worry about them the most because maybe they didn't have any symptoms, but they're still losing bone and they're still losing hippocampal volume
Right.
and all the other things, even though they didn't feel it, it's still happening.
I know I'll hear that and I'll go, well, I don't need to do any hormone replacement because I feel fine. And I'm like, all right, but could we unpack the things you can't see?
Right.
Because it is frightening. And then, like you look at what we're doing with bone mineral density and not even looking at it until the egg's been fried. It's like, why are we looking at bone mineral density at 60? Why aren't we looking at it like at 16?
Oh, 100%. I checked my kids at teenagers and
You're
then
so smart.
just to see, where are they? And then at, 25 and yeah, keep checking every few years because
Yeah.
it's cheap, it's accessible, it's easy to do. You don't need to wait for your insurance to cover it. This concept that we're so ruled by insurance, there's these composition places popping up all over the place where it makes
Yeah.
it really
Less
easy.
than $100.
Yeah, less than $100 and you can check VO2 max and all of it. Do you feel like creatine is sort of the great unifier of the sexes? Everyone we were talking about has their different preferences and tolerances. Do you think creatine is great for everyone, all ages, sexes, etc.?
I think it's even more important for females than males. Here's my reality with creatine. I have been lifting weights and in the weight world for 40 plus years. And so back when I was going through putting myself through school and graduate school, I was down in Goldsham at Venice. And I would literally take clients on field trips down there because it was so fun. And it was back when it was really the mecca of bodybuilding. There weren't a whole lot of normal people in there. And all the guys took creatine. And I just kind of connected the dots between creatine and big, bulky men who obviously were on steroids. So it was like so ridiculous. So I was like, and back then everyone did loading doses and there was fluid retention. I'm like, I'll have none of that. Then a couple years ago, I was looking at it again because things kept popping up about it for brain function. And as I started to look at it, I went, this is like the most important thing that I could think of for women. And when you look at supplements, you kind of stack what's important. You always look at, okay, let's start with food. Then let's look at what should you be getting from your food that you're not, or your lifestyle, like vitamin D and K, like omega 3s, like magnesium. Creatine falls into that. If you think back to likely how we ate 1,000 plus years ago, we were getting raw or less cooked meat and fish, and we're probably eating more of it. And you get creatine from that. Creatine's from meat. And so if we make about 100 we make about a gram a day from arginine, methionine, glycine. Then we have about 120 grams to 140 grams stored in our body. It is stored in our muscles. It's stored 95% in our muscles, 5% in our brain. If you're a guy, it's also stored in your gonads, but majority in our muscles. So women have less muscle mass. We have higher body fat, less muscle, mainly, usually. And so obviously we're going to have less creatine stores. And then you add in that, God, so many women are under eating protein or getting a lot of protein from plant-based sources. They're not getting what they need to replace that creatine that they need to every single day. And then you add into that, well, that's the baseline creatine that you need. But if you are under stress, training hard, jet lag, sleep deprived, crank it up. And so I started messing around with creatine a couple of years ago as I was looking at all this research. And, I stumbled upon the work of Dr. Darren Kandow, and I was looking at all this research, and everyone said, and I'm kind of embarrassed about this, although I just got attacked about saying this. So, which I thought was pretty interesting. I fell into the whole trap of parroting what was being said out there, that the only creatine you should use is monohydrate because it's the most studied form. And that would be like saying, well, since glycinate's the most studied form of magnesium, only use that. Don't use malate or threonate, or, it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I started using monohydrate, and I actually started selling monohydrate. So I got a bunch of people on it. And, I've been in the supplement industry for 30 years. I've spent a lot of time educating doctors on how to use supplements in their practice. So I've had not only the experience of having my own customer base, but working with tons of doctors who have their customer bases. And you don't normally get that much pushback on a supplement. You might get the occasional weird response, but reality is, in all my years of supplements, you either get no response or a good response, and that's about it, right? Like pea protein, sometimes people will say they get bloaty. That's the extent of it. Or maybe if they took some fiber. I got more pushback on creatine monohydrate by like tenfold, maybe 100-fold than anything I've ever talked about. And literally, one of my friends who's a doctor who's slightly sarcopenic, who I'm trying to get to train harder, was like, I will not take it. Like she says, I felt bloated. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But that was the common complaint, was I felt bloated. And not that I got fluid in my muscles, great thing that we'd all love because we look more defined and toned. It's that I feel bloaty thing, I feel gassy thing. And so I was fortunate. I was speaking at a medical conference, and this formulator came up and he said, I created a better creatine, and started talking to me about it. And I was really skeptical because I'd heard that everything beyond monohydrate was just a marketing ploy and just more expensive, blah, 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 right? So I go to this guy's factory, which is in Nebraska, which is great because creatine's generally made outside of the US. And I start digging into what all the research, and what he shows me is that creatine monohydrate's only about 15% absorbed, which is why you get that extracellular, not intramuscular. You'll get some intramuscular fluid, but you'll also get extracellular fluid retention, and you will also get the gassy, bloaty stuff, especially as you start to crank the doses up, which if you look at the literature now for doses to really help with things like sleep deprivation, brain health, you got to kick the doses up. And so I started shifting over to this other product. I tested it with myself, my husband. We had a bunch of the monohydrate to use. My husband refused to use it up. He's like, I won't use it anymore. I'm like, all right, get rid of that. But I started flipping everything over to the HCl form because it's 85% absorbed. So you can get the higher doses with way smaller amounts without side effects. And then I looked at it and went, well, what would make this even more effective? And it turns out there's really cool research because creatine helps create energy. It helps your body make ATP. This is everything for us. And it helps your muscles do it, it helps your brain do it, which is why that you have that energy, that focus. And so it turns out magnesium and taurine both help creatine work better. So I put a product together with all of those. And so I become very obsessed, I will say, with creatine. I'm actually making a skin cream now too, because it turns out it can help with skin and wrinkling. Um, the things that it does do, it really helps you work out harder, recover better. And one of the things I see with uh, peri and postmenopause, I know this happened with me until I got my hormones dialed in. It's like the first sign for me that I was going into perimenopause was I couldn't recover from the gym. I could not recover. I felt like a big achy mess. And I was like, what is going on here? You know? And so anything that can help you work out, recover better, you'll be able to work out harder. That won't be your limiter. And then the other things of just being able to have amazing energy. Like I just came off of a Mindshare Summit, and you start at 6 a.m., we go till 10 p.m. I'm on stage most of the time running around, and we really start actually Tuesday night, and then we go till Sunday night. And then I had to go the week before that, I was speaking at another conference. The week after that, I went straight into speaking at another conference with 4 virtual events. Like it was full on. And I felt great, no problems. But I think it was, high dosing creatine for the win.
I'm on the same page 100%. I tried for the past 5 or so years creatine. Every single time I got bloated, and like you're saying, it's not the good like pump in your muscle. It's just the extra fluid.
Right.
That's not a good look. And so I pretty much just gave up. And then I was at the biohacking conference in the spring, and I grabbed some of your creatine, and it's just night and day. It's just not even the same. I just didn't have any of that. I felt great. It was all the things I wanted from creatine for all those years, but I was just too bloated and it wasn't worth it to me. So it is a really cool product. I haven't gone over 5 grams.
You
Um,
don't need to go over 5 grams. You don't like, so think about the research for brain. And actually, I have a study, I wish I had it right in front of me, that they just did on menopausal women with creatine, and they did 750 milligrams and 1.5. But I think you can go anywhere between a gram, 750 to a gram, up to maybe 3 to 4 grams. You don't need that much because you basically 20 grams of creatine monohydrate is going to be 3 grams of HCl.
oh, interesting. Because
Yeah.
I've been, for instance, my oldest, he's just started college and he's in a fraternity and he's just going a million miles an hour.
Mhm.
So on the nights when he's sleep deprived, because it looks like a lot of the research is saying 20 grams for sleep.
Right. So 20 grams is 4 scoops of the powder or 12 pills,
Okay.
which is why I use the powder.
So
Because
it's still with your product, it's still going to be 20
yeah,
grams.
and you can use, I designed the product so you could quadruple the dose and be totally cool with taurine and magnesium.
Yeah.
Um, so that's how I designed it. And literally, I time zone adjust all the time right now because I'm traveling crazy amounts. And that's how I do it. I use it and it never hurt. It's crazy. I used to have trouble going between California and Florida.
It's an incredible product, and it's so different than other creatines. If people have tried it and not had a good reaction, it's so different. I stopped recommending creatine to women a long time ago because everyone I recommended it to got bloated, and it was a quick 5 to 10 pounds of water weight that no one wants to deal with.
Yeah, and then they're mad at you.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's different than if it's muscle weight, fabulous, but who wants the water weight?
Right.
What about aminos? What are your thoughts on taking essential aminos?
I think this is one of the most underutilized tools out there, and there's a couple different ways you can use them. So if you're getting optimal protein in your diet, you're fine. But I just don't see people doing that, and especially if you're traveling or intermittent fasting, this is where they can be a great tool. Or sarcopenic, or recovering from surgery, or somewhere where you might need even more. Like when I had a son who had a major accident with 13 fractures, and I dosed him with essential aminos multiple times a day to help with the recovery. So if you are not getting the protein that you need in your diet, and for some reason you just can't seem to swing it, you can use a scoop of aminos. I dosed mine so that a scoop, 2 scoops would replace the protein you would need in a meal. 1 scoop would augment it. And so Let's say that you had a wimpy breakfast. So I literally did a consult with a woman who proudly told me she was getting great protein at breakfast, and she said she had a cup of oatmeal and an egg. And I'm like, oh my gosh. We are lucky if we got 8 grams of protein in there. Probably it's more like 6. It's like you're not even close. But we could do a big heaping scoop of aminos with that, and then we would at least cover her bases. If someone's got sarcopenia or they're healing, I'd add another scoop before bed. If you're going to go work out in the gym in the morning, I cannot like generally like what I like to do is work out about 3 hours after I wake up or 4 and get up in the morning and eat breakfast about 90 minutes to 2 hours after waking up. But a lot of times when I'm traveling, if I don't get up, have some coffee and go to the gym, I'm not going to get to work out. So that's when I will put my essential aminos and creatine and electrolytes in this big old thing because I travel with one of these. And then I'll do some collagen in my coffee. I'll take a yolked packet and I'll go to the gym. This breaks the fast, but this whole idea that you need to work out fast is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's like this idea that you should work out fast so you burn more fat. If you're lifting weights, you're not burning fat, you're using glycogen, unless you're like doing some really wimpy weight workout. So,
Yeah, I
right.
agree. And I used to do it. And then it was one of the reasons I knew I was perimenopausal is because I just couldn't anymore. I was really shaky and just didn't have it in me. And I think when you're younger, you can sort of force yourself to do this stuff, even though it's not a great idea.
Right. You have a margin for error. Like your body's like, we can pull it off.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on women's concerns about what, and men too, cholesterol, elevated cholesterol when they're incorporating more animal fats? For me personally, I know I don't have great cholesterol genetics, but I'm not so concerned with elevated cholesterol. It's more like the oxidized cholesterol and particle size and stuff wasn't great for me, and I
Mhm.
really have to. I need a lot of fiber to balance it, and things went wonky for a while, and then now they're great. But
Yeah.
for me, it was like fiber was the huge missing piece for that when I was eating so much animal protein.
I know. I worry. I just was sending a buddy an interview who's like been carnivore for 2 years because I'm like, I think carnivore is a great elimination diet, a reset, especially someone's got a bunch of gut stuff. And then could we bring the fiber and phytonutrients back in for your microbiome? Um, I think that we have to look deeper than just the cholesterol story. My husband has some issues with familiar hypercholesterol. I can never say it right. High cholesterol,
Yeah.
elevated familial high cholesterol. His dad died of a heart attack. Brother's got metabolic syndrome. And so the thing that we did was, clearly scans. And I think that's what's important is we need to see, number one, it's like elevated cholesterol is not what we're looking for. We're looking for, is it plaquing? Is it hard? Is it soft? If it's soft, it could break off and then cause a problem. So what's really going on? And I think we have to look at a way bigger picture than just cholesterol, HDL and LDL. Like again, you talked about the smaller particle sizes that can tend to cause the pitting and the problem. I think that picture into it with the clearly where you can see hard or soft plaque. What else is going on? Do we have high homocysteine? What about insulin? What about inflammation, HSCRP, so all the different things so that you get a better picture of what's really the issue here. And then your genetics. Like my husband does not do well if he does too much coconut oil, sat fats. He has to be careful there. It drives up his ApoB.
Yeah, I'm like that too. I've got to be careful with the coconut oil and the nuts and the red
Yeah.
meat, the whole thing. I mean, there's no perfect thing. Okay, salmon's got mercury and chicken's got arsenic. I mean, what are you gonna do? You gotta like pick your poison. But I do think knowing your genetics is such a big factor because it's hard for me to give people advice without knowing.
The other thing is you can actually kind of see it.
Yes.
Like, you can see as you're starting to give them, like, let's say you do vitamin D testing and then you give them vitamin D and it doesn't really move the needle. Okay, well, what's going on? Do we have some issues genetically with that? Or you start looking at, you put them on a keto diet and all of a sudden just jacks their blood work. All right, maybe they've got an ApoE44. So there's a lot of stuff that you can see if you just start to look. as to what else is going on. But, since everybody's getting their genetics done, it makes
Yeah.
it way easier. Then you don't have to look at the cause and effect. You can just stop it.
Yeah. I do think it's wild how people just jump on these bandwagons, though, I mean, I've used the carnivore diet for clients for a long time for colitis and that sort of thing. And it's been so great when you're in an acute situation. But I can't believe how many people will just sort of go carnivore for no real reason. And like I said, I love it, but you can't just take so much out of your diet for a year. I'll do it recommend it for a couple months or.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Couple months, reset. I think there's a couple important concepts there. One, diets are tools. Like diets are tools. So, I used to work out of a place in Santa Monica in the Palisades called the Pritikin Center. And literally, they would take people and they would put them on a 10% fat diet. They'd let them have fish twice a week, and it was all carbs. And you'd look at this and go, this is a disaster. And yet, for the first couple of months, they got so much better. And then they didn't. Then their triglycerides went through the roof. As you can imagine what would happen. But a diet that could heal you, that could make some shifts, isn't necessarily the diet you need to be on for the long haul. I think the carnivore diet, gosh, with GI issues can be amazing. But you look at why most people are probably going on it because it's removing the noise.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's removing the choices, right? Like when I wrote the Virgin Diet, it was really to help people figure out which foods worked for them, which foods didn't, so they could design the right diet for themselves. People just did it because it pulled out really all the ultra processed food and choices, and it was really easy to lose weight. But
Yeah.
that's not why I designed it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and if you use it for sort of a forced elimination diet, and then you're careful about strategically adding things in, it could be nice because then you'll know what your triggers are.
right.
So you're slowly adding in a few things here and there. But also, we kind of started talking about the GLP-1s, but there are so many peptides and bioregulators. And are there any that you like in the space for building muscle or reducing fat or helping with mitochondrial function? Are you into peptides, or do you try to stay more like eat the proper balance of nutrients and.
So the first thing I'm into is majoring in the majors first. You got to lift weights to actually build muscle. Like I think we all focus on, okay, the protein this I go, but you actually have to lift weights and you have to do it in a way that's going to help you with improving size and strength and power. And then you need to have the things that are going to help you do that. So you got to have good quality protein with the right essential amino acid blend, and then things that can support it, like creatine. I really like this product. Have you heard of Myos or Yoked?
Yeah, yoked is that those packets, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, those
I
are.
am obsessed with this stuff too. It's amazing. I put on 2.5 pounds of fat-free mass in less than 2 months using this, which
Wow.
I mean, I've been lifting weights for 40 years, so to have that happen was insane.
Yeah, that's insane.
Um, yes. Have you tried it?
No,
Oh,
it's like powdery, right? Kind of like
yes.
yellow.
So they have two different forms. That one in the little packets actually tastes delicious. It's fertilized egg yolk protein. What they found is they did a study and showed that in 18 days, or no, in 3 weeks, they increased muscle protein synthesis 18%. It's insane. So they have a medical version that's unsweetened. That's the double dose that you would use for someone with sarcopenia or maybe going through surgery. And then they have the basic dose, which is the one I use and travel with, that's got a little sweetener in it. That it actually tastes delicious, but I do that one every day too. So I like that. And then as far as peptides go, I've been doing an oral peptide from Healthgevity called Strong,
Mhm.
and it's that's another one I think is amazing. On the injectables, I am doing more for orthopedic issues right now. So I did an interview with Dr. Elizabeth Yurth. Do you know who she is?
Yeah, sure, in
She's
Colorado.
amazing. So I started using pentosan polysulfate. So I'm still in the process with that shot. So I'll know in a couple weeks if it's going to actually do what I hope it does. And then I've been using alongside that BPC 157 and TB4. And that was because I did some exosomes and stem cells for the same like arthritic foot situation from a broken foot when I was in my 20s. That's rearing it's really causing problems at this point. So,
it's so interesting that I feel like people are always like, oh, you're young, you'll get over it. Kids are resilient, young people are resilient, but your body really holds on to this
oh
stuff.
yeah,
I
you
mean,
know,
it's like this generation, I think, is so lucky because the second they have an injury, it's like they can do the Wolverine stack, they can do hyperbaric, they can like get on
mhm.
it and do all the things. We didn't have that
No.
luxury. And so any little weird thing that happened, now we're feeling it.
Well, and plus, like, I blew out my knee. Well, back then they just cut your meniscus out and told you you'd have a knee replacement in a couple of years. So, that happened. And then I broke my foot and, took the cast off. So that happened. Like just things, that
Yes.
end up just setting you up for a bad, a bad problem later.
What would you say, like looking back on your life? I mean, you seemed to have been very far ahead of the game as far as like I worked out at the gym always, but I was lifting, looking back on it, really light weights. I lift at least 3 or 4 times more now than I did in my 20s. I was just kind of going through the motions and definitely wasn't eating enough. Were you always like, was it just an intuition? Were you always doing that? Or was there a point where you were underdoing it as well?
I wasn't underdoing it because of where I was. I got lucky. So a couple things happened. First of all, I'm 6 feet tall. So growing up, I was always on the boys' team because there was a shortage of boys. So I always played on the boys' team. And so when I went off to high school, the girls did not have a gym. The boys had this amazing weight room. And and I was like looking at this weight room and I go, this looks really cool. I'm so used to working out with the boys. I just went over and started working out in the weight room with the football team. And they were like, all right. So, I mean, I literally started lifting weights in high school with the football team. And then when I went off to college, I was teaching a lot of aerobics back then because I was always a dancer and I thought I was going to be a musical theater uh, actress, which is a joke because I can't sing. But I was always doing a lot of gymnastics and dance, and I go off to college, so I start teaching aerobics at the local aerobics place. And then someone wanted me to come to their house, and that's how I started personal training. And along the same time, I found Gold's Gym in Venice. And when I was down there, like people work out hard there. There were no little dumbbells. Like there were 70-year-old women. I remember they were so old and they were in such amazing shape. And I'm like, I want to do that. And they were lifting heavy. Like people would spend all day because it was really a bodybuilding gym. I mean, people were in there all day doing stuff, and there was no little wimpy weights like we would do in aerobics class, right? So then that's just what I did because that's what I saw, and what I saw was working. And, and what I was learning in graduate school, like what we were learning in biomechanics and kines is what you needed to do to build muscle. And it wasn't, you know, doing 50 reps with a 5 pound dumbbell. And back then we were taught it was a very tight, it was it was very different than what we know now that there's a broad range for hypertrophy. It was like 8 to 12 repetitions.
It's
That's
so
what you
funny
needed.
because when I was 25, I moved to Santa Monica. The first thing I did was join Gold's Gym. And I don't know, I was like really into Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger and stuff, and I just headed straight there. And I met with a nutritionist.
How long ago was that? How old are you?
I'm 51, so this was
So
like
you were already there once they started pepping it up. Like when I first started going to Gold's Gym, there were 2 rooms. There was no aerobics room. There was a little loft with a
there
couple
wasn't a room.
Aerodyne bikes.
Yeah,
Remember that?
yeah.
And, but there were only 2 rooms. And there were no trainers at the time. Like you didn't have to, there were a couple trainers. And then all of a sudden there's like 400 trainers and there's multiple rooms and there's an aerobic studio and all this crap that was so opposite of what it was.
Well, I just couldn't hear it at the time. I met with a nutritionist there and I said, I'm kind of lumpy even though I'm doing all these things. And she said, let me guess, you're eating cereal, you're eating yogurt, and I was like, yeah, right, exactly. Because that was the time, right? It was like low fat, everything. And she said, you really need to be eating more animal protein and this and that. And I,
Remember everyone went over to the firehouse and got chicken and broccoli and brown rice?
yeah, that was it. Yeah, chicken, broccoli, brown rice. That was
Mhm.
all you were supposed to eat back then, you know, which is still like a good, it's still a great meal. Um, well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. You've been someone I've looked to for information for a long time. And it's funny when you say that you're 6 feet tall. I was telling my son that I was speaking with you today, and I said, "Do you remember where we got your creatine at the conference?" And we saw her, and she walked by us because I'm 5'9". I never feel short. And you walked by, and I felt so. I said, "She's the one that makes me feel short."
I was just with Gabby Reese and I'm like, this is weird.
She's like 6'2".
I think she's 6'3". I'm like,
Yeah,
okay. Like, like,
it's all
you know what?
relative.
I don't like feeling short. I like
I
being the
don't
tallest
either.
person. Yeah.
I know. I thought I should have worn my heels. Um, but you're such a force in so many ways and such a great role model to a lot of women. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me so I can share it with
I
my community.
appreciate that.